So today we're taking a look at the UltraSound, the sound card UltraSound, not the one that lets you see your unborn child, because that'd be a little strange for this channel. So the Gravis UltraSound, ever since I was a kid, I would see the Gravis UltraSound setting in games like Jazz Jackrabbit, Epic Pinball, and One Was Fall, and I always kind of wondered what that sounded like. So this is really the first time I'm ever hearing a Gravis UltraSound. And it's not a real Gravis UltraSound, this is actually a clone made by our friend David, who I talked about in another video, who made the Sound Blaster 1.5 clone. All you really need to know about David is he is a Swedish Viking that makes clone sound cards, and they're really cool. So this is not an Argus. I'm just gonna get that out of the way. First of all, this is a completely different project. Might be based on the Argus, not quite sure, but whatever the case is here, this is a fully functional clone of the original Gravis UltraSound plug and play. So let's talk about the machine I put it in, the specs of this thing, and the overall quest I sort of had to get this thing working. So let's get going. So what is there to say about this clone? Just like David's Sound Blaster 1.5 clone, this card is made with new parts and components. Of course, the legendary AMD Interwave chip needed to be sourced from old components because it's no longer in production, but everything else here is newly made. Buying one of these puppies will set you back around $180 for the plastic bracket variant, or an extra $25 for the one with the metal bracket that I have here. If you haven't noticed already, this is a really killer deal, since original GUS cards are selling for $400 and up on eBay. In some ways, the Gravis UltraSound is a very quirky card, but it was also very advanced for its time, and with this card being an identical clone, you will get the same quirks and advantages of the real thing. Now, I'm a bit of a noob with this card, and setup can be quite difficult since it's a bit of a resource pig and requires around 3 IRQs and 3 DMA channels. Now, I was going to originally set this up in my slot 1 rig with Windows 98 SE like I always do, but you're not going to believe this, guys. My Windows installation is kind of messed up on that computer because of all the sound card drivers I have on it. I have no idea how that happened. So anyway, I ended up using a fresh install of Windows 95 on my HP Vectra VE. Considering this is my childhood PC, it seemed kind of right anyway. Also to be noted is that this card will need a 72-pin FPM RAM module to work, which is sold separately. The max supported amount of memory is 16 megabytes, and that will only cost you about $7 on eBay, so you might as well go ham on the RAM. Also, I hope you appreciate my repeated failed efforts to cinematically install this RAM on camera. Speaking of failed efforts, it took me longer than I really care to admit to get everything up and running with this card, but I finally found all the drivers and everything that I needed. Oddly, the official drivers on Vaughan's are on a floppy image, and the patches for the Wavetable are on a separate CD image. Would it have killed Gravis to put the drivers on the CD too? I will link the drivers below so no one else needs to suffer getting these to work like I did. So how is the GUS for DOS gaming? Many games have native support for the Gravis UltraSound, and if a game does support it, it will probably provide a superior experience compared to something like a Sound Blaster. The driver package for the GUS comes with a prep game exe that automatically patches compatible games to detect the card. It contains fixes for Epic games and will update the DOS extender if needed. Some games don't work unless you do this. If the game doesn't support the UltraSound, you can use Sound Blaster software emulation to play games that support AdLib, Sound Blaster, and General MIDI. For this to work, you need to load the IWSBOS program into memory before launching a game. This is an interesting novelty, but only because of how comically bad the OPL emulation is. Kind of makes everything sound like a carnival. Check it out. Okay, Okay, so maybe it was mean of me to highlight the Sound Blaster emulation first. It really is kinda terrible. However, any game that uses tracker soundtracks or wavetable modes, this thing will sound killer. In fact, the main use for these in the 90s was for tracker musicians or gamers to use alongside a real Sound Blaster. Because the GUS uses hardware mixing and has its own RAM, high quality samples can be recorded or played back with minimal CPU overhead. The output is also so clean compared to pretty much any card that came out in this time period. So now let's listen to what this thing can really do. I recorded some samples of a few games and some tracker tunes I really feel bring out the best that the GUS can offer. All of these programs were run in real DOS mode outside of Windows for the best sound quality. Enjoy.
Round 1. Fight.
glorious, isn't it? I'm stoked that this card exists and can be easily purchased by enthusiasts. As cool as owning a real GUS would be, for most of us, that's not going to happen. And this is the option at the moment for those who want to experience a real GUS outside of emulation. Well guys, that just about does it for this video. If you liked this one, maybe check out some of my others. There's definitely more where this came from. Whether you consider that to be a good thing, well, that's your choice, I guess.